Hey guys, this is Greg Tastic here, and today I'm going to talk to you about a couple of Ryzen motherboards, specifically the Prime X370 Pro from Asus and the ASRock Fatality X370 Gaming K4. These are the two motherboards that I've used in the past couple of weeks, so I just wanted to give you some overall thoughts on them and, either recommend them or not recommend them. I'm not going to go too much into the specs and features of them because I'm sure you could get that online. I'm more worried about the end user experience and how well it was and how well the manufacturers are supporting the motherboards after releasing them. First things first, everybody's having problem with RAM compatibility on these motherboards. I did too. I have an EVGA 2 8 gigabyte 16 gigabyte kit running at 2400, and it worked fine in my previous build that I bought it for, and I used it for this one, and it's only recognizing my RAM at 2133. Both motherboards only recognize it at 2133. If I try and overclock it manually, both motherboards fail to do that. They just reset and set the BIOS back to normal and say that it didn't work. A major gripe that I have with Asus, I did not, to be fair, I've only had the ASRock for a little bit, and I'm going to contact them today, and I'll update you guys later on how long it takes them to respond. A big problem I have with Asus is I contacted them about the RAM, and I tried to ask them if it would be validated in the future. I used their email form, which they say they'll reply back to in 48 hours. They say, we will reply to you within the next 48 hours, business hours. It doesn't say, we'll try to, or anything like that. It says, we will. So ask for your information, your serial number, your operating system. When you fill in the serial number, more information pops up asking for your CPU, your GPU, your RAM. So they have all the information about your system before you even talk to them, just from this form. I emailed them on March 7th. On March 13th, almost a week later, I get a response back from them, and they ask, what type of RAM are you using? That's all they ask. So I waited a week for them to just ask what type of RAM I was using when I supplied that information in their form a week earlier. So you just wasted half of my eligibility to return this motherboard, which I was very thinking about doing, and you just sealed the deal. I responded and said, listen, it took you a week to even ask me what RAM I'm using. I already sent you that information. I'm just going to return the motherboard. I'm not happy with your customer service. And they responded back, well, sorry about that. Here's a list of the validated RAM for the motherboard. They sent that back 2 days later, so I guess at least they're on their 48-hour timeline then. And they supplied me with the list that I referenced in my email saying, I see this RAM isn't on the list. Will you validate it in the future? So I had a big gripe there. The other issue that I had with the board, and when I'm pointing out these issues, assume that everything else worked perfectly. I'm just pointing out the things that I didn't like about it. Everything else was fine, and if there's something if these things don't concern you and I don't mention the other things, that means that they worked fine out of the box. But the other issue I had was the BIOS. And the BIOS was kind of lackluster, and especially when I was comparing it to the higher up, I forget what the name of it is, but the higher up Asus board, the one that was like in the 200s, I overclocked my CPU to 4.0 gigahertz on this motherboard, and that wasn't stable, so I went down to 3.8, and that was stable. Just letting you guys know so that you understand what I did with it. The issue that I had, and I'm an overclocking noob, this is the first time I ever overclocked a CPU, but the issue I had is that it was the clock speed was stuck at the overclock speed, and people on Reddit told me that was normal, but I really didn't think so because I googled it, and a lot of people were talking about C states and this and that, and I didn't think that was normal for it to be stuck on that same speed. So I searched in the BIOS for ages to figure out how to change that, and I couldn't change it. I just there is no way to change it. I think there's an option in the higher up board that lets you set the C states or something like that. But as far as I know, this motherboard, if you overclock it, your clock speed's gonna be stuck at the overclock. And I know that the people on Reddit were giving me false information because with this motherboard, I overclocked it to 3.8 gigahertz, and the clock speed is constantly changing. And it has reached 3.8, but when it's not needing that much power, it downclocks to, you know, other clocks. I don't know how to explain it. I was playing a game yesterday, Star Trek on Steam, and the CPU never went over 3 gigahertz. So obviously Asus is missing some stuff on in their BIOS. And talking about BIOSes, just comparing the two, there used to be 4 BIOSes up here. I guess those the other two were like, I think there were 4. I might be wrong. I thought there were 4. The other two might have been like so early that they took them down. But they have a February 24th BIOS and a February 28th BIOS. So they haven't updated the BIOS since launch for this motherboard at all. Okay, I just paused because I accidentally opened up my support ticket, which had my serial number in it. So if the transition seemed kind of weird, I'm sorry. But meanwhile, ASRock has a stable update to their BIOS March 7th, and they've been releasing beta BIOSes that you could try quite frequently. And I'm running the 313 2017 beta BIOS, and I don't have any issues with it. Also, this option right here was not in the Asus BIOS. So basically, the ASRock BIOS, all this talk of multi-threading and is it helping or hurting the performance of games, Asus did not have that option in their BIOS. And when I was testing this out, I had to use Affinity, and it's stupid. I don't like it. The ASRock BIOS has an option, admittedly in the beta right now, but that lets you turn multi-threading on or off. So now it would be easier for me to either test out if that's better or not better, and if it is better or not better, easier for me to change it as opposed to having to use Affinity, which is annoying. So, besides that, the motherboards basically work the same as far as I'm concerned. The only problem I had with ASRock is they don't include this guy here to make my life easier because it's hard to stick all those things in the pins. It's annoying. Especially, like, I don't know. It's just annoying. I think you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, bottom line, my final thoughts on the motherboards. 1. Buy a motherboard buy RAM that is listed as supported by your motherboard. That seems like ideally in 2017 you would hope that RAM would just work, and I see that as like a flaw that it's not working correctly. But if you have your choice of buying RAM, make your life easier and just buy a RAM that's validated for your motherboard. The other thing is Asus versus ASRock. These motherboards are similarly priced. Actually, the Asus motherboard is more expensive, yet I feel it's not as good. The motherboard itself might be, like, physically might be just as good, but the support for it, the fact that ASRock is putting out more BIOSes and is putting more features in the BIOS, and stuff like overclocking is actually working correctly, whereas Asus is just like, here, stick with your 3.8 gigahertz clock speed and don't ever change it. I feel like ASRock is supporting the motherboard a lot better, and I feel like it has the same features pretty much, but is a cheaper price. So my thoughts on it, I'm going to contact ASRock and ask them about the RAM and see how long it takes them to get back to me. But at this point, after my experience waiting a week to get an email back just to ask me information that I already answered, I would not suggest any Asus product, to be honest. I was really unhappy with that customer support. But looking at it objectively and ignoring how I felt about that, I would say that the ASRock, at least right now, is pretty far ahead of the Asus board as far as the BIOS updates and the BIOS options. And besides for that, everything's pretty much even. So I hope I helped you guys out a little bit with what you could expect using these boards or dealing with their customer service. I will update you guys on when I hear back from ASRock, and I'll see you guys next time. By the way, if you have any questions, just ask me. If there's anything you wanted to know that I didn't put in here, just ask me and I'll answer the questions. Or if you want me to cover anything else, I can very easily. But I'll see you guys next time. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you dislike, which I'm sure many people will dislike this video, I'm sure people will be like, you don't know how to overclock, that's why your cores are stuck at the speed, or you don't know anything about overclocking, they're supposed to be stuck at that speed, or you're a noob, you don't know anything about memory. I'm sure you guys have the people will dislike this video. At least for my sake, tell me why you dislike it, and we could talk about it. But I'll see you guys next time.